Well, hello everyone. I don't know who might be on here with me yet. This is Donna McCauley in the DMQuilting studio, and I am really looking forward to sharing some fun stuff with you today. We will be looking at our new templates, the STAR 5-point template, and the 5-point means there are 5 points on the star. Going to be having some other stars coming out in the future, and so I needed to designate that as a 5-point. And you can see right here, it has all of those. So I'm going to give everyone just a few minutes here to get on and make sure we've got connection. We are just a couple of seconds into our programming, and I don't want to get too far ahead. I know that you can all go back and rewatch from the beginning, but sometimes catching up is the hard thing to do. And so we want to avoid some repetitive questions. I do have Vanna on here with me today, and so she's going to help and monitor those questions so that we can try and get all of those addressed. It's so helpful for me that she's on there. So go ahead and comment on here. Tell me where you are. And so Vanna says, hi, girls. That's Wendy McCaffrey for any of you that don't know who she is. So tell me where you're watching from and what your general time frame is. That's always kind of fun to see. And how you plan to use these new STAR templates. And so we're going to be doing some demoing. But before we go there, I want to share with you a little bit about the information in the information sheet. And so that is right here. I posted that on the So Steady page and also the DMQ Rulerwork classroom group. And so you should be able to get access to that and download it. There's a few pages here, and it really is the information we're going to look at today. So our cover page here is the STAR and the Wiggles templates. And then we go into what I call the user information for the templates. And it explains what the lines are and the signs and all the arrows and all of those kind of things. And it shows you the actual stitching in there. And so that is something that's available with all of the templates. Here on page 3 is showing some different patterns that can be stitched out. Now with the STAR templates, there are 5 different sizes. You can see that up at the top. We'll take a closer look at the templates themselves in a few minutes, but we're just kind of scanning through this material. Here we have some different options of ways that you can use them. We have just a continuous straight line row. Second line is the same orientation, but the tip point is right up at the bottom edge of the previous row, not at the bottom edge down here, but at the point up in there. And the second row is kind of interesting. See how these little offset diamonds get created? This has our star going across tip to tip, just like what we have here, but our second row is flipped the other direction, so the top is now at this end. And just simply by changing that orientation of our quilting, we get a whole different look. So we have 2 rows, and they look completely different just because we turned the template one way or another. And here we're back to our top up, and then this one is top down, but they're matched through the center. And so we get a combination of different looks there that can be created with the stars. Down here in the bottom, I'm showing how we can alternate different sizes and just stitch the whole pattern and then actually stitch along our baseline to our starting point for our next star and back on the baseline to the next one. So we would actually have stitched into our pattern a solid straight line down there as well. So I hope you were able to get your downloads and print them off. This next page, I just took the same star. We're going to stitch this one out here today. It's kind of fun to do. And I threw some colors in there just so you can see a little bit of variation of what happens. So these are, I have an 8-point rotations marked. And we start right in the very center of those 8 rotations. And this is our top point right here, is in the center, and each one of them are aligned, and so it creates some really interesting patterns as it gets stitched out. I've been playing with that one on the sewing machine a little bit. It's pretty fun. And then we have our wiggles, and I know some of you out there have the wiggles already, have been using them and working with them, and so I'm kind of curious if you want to just in the comments tell me what you think about the wiggles or how you've used them. I did have a couple of photos from some gals that used them and created some really nice patterns. And I think that maybe a lot of you have already seen those. Her quilt actually looks like this pattern here. And so I think she used the 2-inch template to create that, and then just offset them by about a 1/2 inch space in between. And you get this really pretty, almost a wave pattern that gets created across the whole pattern or fabric. Down here, if we offset from our beginning point, and then we get this little twisted ribbon look instead of the ripples that are created up here. So these are all really quick and easy to use. They're kind of fun to play with, and they're real easy to handle. They're not big in size, the templates themselves, and so they're pretty easy even on small base sewing machines where your surface area isn't real big. And here you can see the dotted line that you have. If you have the printout, you can see it. You probably can't see it here on my image, but this first broken line right here comes all the way around, and this would be our first pass coming through. And then we just simply turn and go back, and that is the solid line. And you could do that same kind of a offset ovals with the crisscross in the middle down through there, through your whole pattern. Here would be your center line. And so there's just all kinds of ways that you can use the wiggles to create different effects. I kind of like this little ribbon look that we get here, the loops. And that's all of our paperwork. So let's go and take a look at what the templates look like, and then we're going to do some sewing. I think that we might even do a giveaway here later if we have some of you that could be interested in that. We'll have to select the winner, of course, after the programming today. And so let me know what you think you would want to have, the wiggles or a star, and we will pick a winner. And that will be announced later. Let me make some camera adjustments, and then we'll be able to see the sewing machine a little bit better here. So someone is asking a question about using the wiggles with the star. I don't know why you couldn't. I haven't tried to do that. I think you could make your own flag, the U.S. flag with the stars and the stripes, and maybe create the wiggles that way. Try it. Let me see what you think. I probably won't be doing that here today just because of our timing, but I might play with that. So here is our template, and it has the vertical line. So this is what I call the top. It's 5 points, and so something has to be at the top somewhere. And so that is up here. I have a vertical center line and then horizontal line at the top. And this is going to help you if you want to line up within a certain margin of spaces. This is going to help you know where that top edge is. Down the sides are vertical lines on the sides, and this is the outside edge of our point as it is in this location. Then the solid line at the bottom, our vertical center line goes all the way down, and we have our vertical side lines, and here is the horizontal center line. This one over here doesn't have a line, but it just goes right through the middle of the thread slot. And so I always try to do it that way. If you don't see a line on both sides, it's because it's right down through the middle of the slot. So let's move this aside, and we will get some fabric over here and do a little bit of quilting. Do we have any questions, Wendy, while I'm getting situated here? Not yet. So this is your time, folks. We have an opportunity for you to take a look. Let me see. My thread felt like it was tangling out. So I'm going to position this right here. You can see that I have just marked out this template that I'm using. This is the 3.5 inch star. Let me bring them all over here before we go too far. This is the 3.5 inch that we're going to be using today. In the small size, 1.5 by 2.5, or 1.5 inches tall, I'm sorry, 1.5 inches tall and 2.5 inches tall. And both of these are built into the very same template. I like doing that when it's practical, because why do we have to have a separate template when we can get both of them in the same one? Sometimes they're just too big and that doesn't work. But in this case, because it's only stitches, a 1.5 inch tall star and a 2.5 inch tall star, was pretty easy to put them both in one template. And we looked at the 3.5 right there. And then we have our next size up is a 4.5. Let's move this back a little bit. Maybe we can get them all on here. And then this is the granddaddy of them all. This is the 5.5 inch star. So we have 5 different sizes of our 5-point star, and there are 4 templates that include all of those. So our first, number 1, is the 2 templates in one, or the 2-in-1, and then each of the other 3 are separate. These are available for ordering now. I don't know positively that they've been posted on the Sew Steady website, but they are on mine, the DMQuilting.com website, and are available for you. And there's different ways they can be ordered. And of course, the best way is the set, because you always get the best pricing on all of that. So let's move these back. So I have marked out on my fabric here, just some rows, and I went ahead and I marked lines because I just have a solid piece of fabric that isn't a border or anything like that. I put some alignment guidelines on here just so we can see. My broken line down through the middle is representing my center line. And if I were on a quilt and going to do some all over patterns like this, for example, I would only put marks through where that center line goes. And I wouldn't even do a solid line. I just do the hash marks or dashed lines. These are about a 1/2 inch long and spaced out 1/2 inch or more. Just something so you can follow it. When we put the template in place, you can tell, and I'm going to turn it here so you can see it. Try to get out of the lights that are glaring. And you can see that our bottom line matches up right on that marked line and the top one. So this template is 3.5 inches tall from the top to the very lowest bottom points. And so the center is right here. So if you don't want to do any math and have to figure it out, the easiest way is just to measure it. And you can do that with a really good ruler that you trust by putting it on the template and measure from that bottom line to the center line is 1 3/4 inches. And that's the distance you need between all of those. So that's just kind of a quick and easy little cheater effect. How's that? I don't want you to have to get the calculator out in order to figure out where to put your stars. So here, what we're going to do is a couple of stars just doing continuously across the row. And so for that, there will be a little bit of backtracking or double backing, but I think you can handle it as long as we don't move the template. We shouldn't have a problem. My thread feels like it's really tight here, so I don't know if I'm going to have a problem or not. Let's see if it'll work. I may have to rethread it. So I'm going to hold on to that top thread, lower my needle, raise the needle, and pull up my bobbin thread, and then hold on to that. As I am doing that, I'm going to be able to secure those stitches. I can pick up my threads. You always have to hold on to those threads in the very beginning just so it doesn't make a mess. And so I'm not really in the corner. I'm going to stitch down toward the corner. So we want to take a few close together stitches right in the beginning. Now let me turn this around here and get rid of those threads. I'm just going to cut them off. In a quilt, of course, I wouldn't do that. But right now, for what we're doing, they're going to be in our way, and we won't be able to see what we're doing. So anytime you take your hands off that template, then you're going to need to make sure you are realigned again. And the benefit of all these extra markings on here is it makes it easy to do that with. So I've turned my star all the way around, mostly because I want you to be able to see what we're doing here. And we just stitch. You don't have to go really fast. Once you get down to where the point is, you can double check your alignment. If you have moved anything at all, this is the time to realign. The way the curvature of the template is made, you will have definite points. Oh dear, I knew something was wrong with my thread. It just broke. Oh, I hate it when it happens this way. Well, we're going to see how this works. And we have to rethread everything completely. I'm so sorry, folks. I know you all know what it's like. And this is a live program, and we can't ever make things go perfectly smooth every time. But we get to restart, and it's okay because that's really easy to do. Using the thread slot, I'm able to actually put my thread right back in where it needs to go and then put the template in place. So I think Vanna says there's a question. So Vanna's question is, if this happens to you, what do you do when you start again? And that's exactly what we're going to show you. So all of these things that sometimes come across as boo-boos in one world are helpful in another. And so I'm going to lower that back into position. So what I'm going to do here, check and see what happened on the bottom with my thread. What caused my thread to break. How do you like that fabric? It's pretty wild for a back, huh? So what I'm going to do here, I'm not using the template yet, okay? I'm going to lower my foot and I'm going to go in about 1/4 of an inch before where my thread broke, and I'm going to pull my bobbin thread up right there at that point. So I am getting situated. And I'll put that right down in place. Just a second here, and I'll show you where we are. So I don't know how well you can see that, but my thread, let's lift that foot, my thread actually broke way out here, and it's about 1/4 of an inch beyond where my needle is right now. But what I'm going to do is stitch over the top of that, and it will secure it in place. If you're worried about it, or you are working on a quilt that is going to get a lot of rough and tumble work out and laundry, you might want to go ahead and remove those stitches back a little ways. I wouldn't take the whole thing out, but back it out about 1 inch and then bury those threads. And then they're secured just as if you planned it that way. So now let's put the template in place, back around the needle, and I have to find my orientation. Get lined up. So all of these things kind of cause a little bit of a hang up for us, but it's not anything that's life-shattering. We can still make it through the day. I'm going to secure my threads underneath my stable tape, and so when I put pressure on it, that's going to help hold it for me. I am in the correct position, and I'm going to go back just a hair, 1 stitch, and then I'll come forward. Just kind of like a little reverse sewing there. Now let's get rid of that thread so it doesn't tangle up again. So now I've turned my star around, and I need you to see what I'm doing. If I don't do that, you're not able to see what's happening here. And now we'll come right on along. This is coming up to the top point, once we get up there, we're going to be right on our line. And I'm going to grab because I moved my template, I'm going to grab my spacing gauge just to make sure I'm far enough up so that I can match up to my line down here. Should be good because my etch lines are right on the mark lines. Now we're going to stop right here at that point. That's why we started up here on that line, but before the point, because this template, we're just going to slide it over. And here's how we can now do our second star, that is our continuous row. And these will be touching on tip to tip, just like in this first row right up here. Because we have these outside edge markings, it's really helpful for you to know where you can align your template. So as you're working along, if you need to scooch over just a little bit, you can do that because the lines are going to help you be where you stay and see where you need to be. I'm doing my second row around. I'm not going back. I am just simply over stitching part of my first pattern because I started on the left side of the star, but I need to end on the right side, and so I have to stitch over there or break threads and move. Now I am right back in that corner again on the right side, and I will slide the template to the right. So we could very easily line them up and stitch in a row like this. But if you're doing your stars coming across, it's likely that you're going to have more fabric built up out here on this outer edge. And so because of that, what I like to do is turn and work in a vertical row. My pattern is horizontal, but when I'm stitching my horizontal row, I will have the whole project, the quilt, turned and be stitching in a vertical row. I can see to line it up so much better, and I don't have to worry about all of this fabric on the side over here getting in my way. If it's in the middle of my quilt, then of course I'm going to have more fabric here, but the whole thing is going to feed through more flat, and it's just a lot easier. So that's just something that I like to do. So if you have tried that and it's worked for you, let me know. And if you have not, give it a try and let me know what you think. So here we are, just coming all along. So we are going to pretend that we're going to make the second row coming down. So this time, because this is my last one up at the very top, When I'm not going to go a second time around across that top row from left over to the right. I'm going to come right back where I am stitching now and come back down to the center. So it's really pretty easy to maneuver as long as you don't take your hands off of the quilt or the template. You really can get back to where you want to go. So here, we're going to stop right in the middle and slide it downward. And this is where we can stack them vertically. So the stars are pretty self-explanatory, honestly. You can overlay them, you can stack them up, you can actually stitch them one inside the other. You can do self-echoing, use a large one and then a small one. All kinds of different things with these. And since we're doing our Christmas in July program, this is kind of a nice one to add to that Christmas collection. So I'm not going to go any farther with my stars. I think you get the idea there of how they work, but aren't they kind of cool? So this is the 3.5 inches, and it honestly stitches from the lowest point to the top point, 3.5 inches tall. So let's get another piece of fabric and play with the rotation part of it. I bet you didn't know we could do rotations. So I'm going to start in the center. And pull my bottom thread up. This time we will stitch all the way around and come back to center and then rotate our template. You know, we're so accustomed to doing these rotating patterns that it's not really so hard anymore. So let me take the template out. Here is our top center, and I'm going to have that be where I rotate every time, is at the top center will be up around the foot. So I'm going to hug that right in there, and my mark line for my rotations is the one I'm going to line up with down here is the bottom part of my vertical center line. Only going to do a couple of these because it takes a little bit of time to do all 8, and we want to be able to have time to do some wiggles. So do we have any questions, Vanna, or any comments there we need to talk about? Okay, so Sue is asking a question about turning and doing horizontal rows vertically and having the bulk, and what do you do with the Baptist fans? So here we have one star, and I'm going to stop before I answer that question. Thank you, Sue, for your question. I am at the top, and I'm going to rotate the template. Let's go this way, I can see it better. And line up right on my next mark line, and we'll stitch that. So I'm going to stitch and talk. How's that? Maybe I won't mess it up. let's skip that one and go to our next one, as if we had only 4 rotations instead of 8. So Sue's question there is, what do you do with the bulk? I suppose she's mostly wanting to know about when you're doing the Baptist fans. Well, the Baptist fans are a little different in how they work, and and I'm going to assume you're talking about the mini Baptist fan templates, that you stitch one part and change templates and stitch the next part and keep doing that. And whether or not you want to work in that vertical row or a horizontal row honestly doesn't make much difference there, because you're only stitching a very small section at a time in that same area. But I think I would most likely, the last time I did that on a larger project, I did it with the horizontal turned vertical, because you can see, and that alignment is critical because you have to stitch back and over stitch and things like that when you're working with those Baptist fans. So here I'm going to rotate the whole thing. I would not do this on a quilt, but so you can see what we're doing. And I've got some extra lines in there because my pencil moved. So Sue, I hope that answers your question. If it's too hard for you because of the bulk, working with the Baptist fans, turning it like that, don't do it. Keep it going straight across. You need to have a large flat area of about 12-inch square or so, regardless of which direction you're working. And so if it's easier for you to work in a horizontal manner rather than a vertical manner, then that's the one you should do. Let's get rid of that thread. So here we have 3 stars that are rotated from the center, and there's just all kinds of crazy things we can do with that. So here, I'm going to stop and cut that thread just so we can take it out and look at it. Just mostly so we don't run out of time. But here, we have only 4 rotations instead of the 8. And you can see how we create some additional work inside there. What I think is really kind of cool is we have definite points out on our ends. And so those make for some great edges and ways that we can connect. And you can see here in this graphics, by doing a set of rotations, whether it's 4, 8, 6, 5, however many marked lines you want, and then matching up your points on your next one over here, you can really create some really interesting patterns just by rotating a template that you most likely would use in a continuous row. So that's just kind of a fun little thing there. So Vanna says this is cute, so that's kind of fun. It's kind of different. So I had originally marked out 8 rotations. You can see all my extra lines in there. But what we stitched just now was only 4 rotations. But if we were to do our next one, you know, it would line up in here. And so there's going to be crisscrossing, and that creates a center area also. So our template here is, so Vanna's question is, what size would the pattern be? Well, our template that we're using is 3.5 inches. And so we are outside edge to the tip and across. So it's about twice the size of our template. Maybe not quite, because let's see, down here, we aren't going all the way, well, we are all the way out to here. So 2 times 3.5 is 7 inches. So this would be about 7 inches. If we're using the smaller one or larger one, then we would have different dimensions. But I chose this one because it's the middle size, and I thought maybe we could do some work with it a little quicker. But the bigger one works the same way. They all work the same way. So let's take a look at the wiggles. So back over here in our instructions, let's just take a look at it real quick. I give you information. This one is using the 2-inch size right here for this pattern, just because you have a little bit more room to work with. But all of them can be done, the whole thing can be done with either the 2-inch or the 1-inch. I just found a typo on my paper. Has anybody found it? I bet not. Let me know when you do. So here is our Wiggles template, and it's kind of cool the way it works. It has an A and a B. It has a center line just for guidance, and then it has a start, end line, and another top and bottom, or horizontal, and then a vertical center this way or vertical center this way, depending on which way you're working. If you are going in a lateral movement, then you would want to follow these as well as all of the others to keep it aligned. I also have stable tape on both sides of this particular template. So if you want to flip it and switch, then that's the reason for that. So let's get it lined up. I have a row coming across here. I marked it at 1 inch wide, and I have my dash marks for my center, just so I know where center is. I like to put that top and bottom line so you can see where we're going. We're going to start at A, stitch around, and we just wiggle across the quilt. So it doesn't really matter exactly in there. We don't have to have the template in place, because once we know where we are, we can put it there. We just want to be on that center line. Let's get in position here. So I am at A, and I'm going to line up and stitch down. Follow my center lines right here are kind of small, but I can see where they are and if I'm on the line or not. And when we do this one here, we'll start at A and take some little bitty micro stitches just to secure those threads. Once you've done that, you can let go of the thread, get it out of your way, and you're ready to go. And you keep that foot in this particular template. Just follow the stitch path. wiggle along. When you get to B, the template rotates in place and realign and stitch to A. Down at the end, rotate the template. So it goes pretty quick because there isn't too much you have to do to it. Just spin it around and line it up. So you can see here how you could easily complete a project using the wiggles without taking a ton of time. Even though it's a small template and doesn't stitch a very big pattern, it doesn't take much time to do it. It's actually a pretty good one to learn how to control your stitch length because you're not going to go anywhere with it. You cannot go side to side. You're only going to go right in the stitch path. So let's see what happens here. Let's move that out of the way so you can see. We just have a real nice, pretty little wavy line that comes down along through there. Let's come over here and I'm going to move my template and I'm going to use the edge of it and I'm going to stitch down about 1/4 of an inch. Better hold all the fabric. And what I want to do is be just about at that edge, and then we're going to go right back in place. Now, we're not actually in place. We are supposed to be about 1/4 of an inch below our center line. And so now this is going to let me line up the tip edge of these points right on my stitches as we come along here, or right now we want to be with our center line 1/4 of an inch up above it because we're going to do some offset and see how that works out. And we go back the other direction. Now this is a real narrow offset. This is 1/4 of an inch. You probably wouldn't want to do it that close unless you are in a sashing or a small border area. To do it on a bigger quilt or some edge to edge all over quilting, you're going to want to space it out maybe even an inch apart and just do more of these rows farther out. Boy, the wind is really picking up outside. This gives you the idea of how it works when we're doing that offset. I got off on my path. My template wasn't lined up correctly. So if we're off track, when we get to the top of our pattern, we can adjust our template just a little bit if we need to get right back on. This is really a close pattern, and really, I don't think we probably want to use this very often unless you're creating ribbons or something like that. It's pretty narrow. So let's cut that. and take it out and see what we're doing. So even though I got off track down in this area here, if I were working on a project, I would be a little more precise in my placement and careful in my positioning so that I would have it just right. I would probably even do some grid lines coming this way so I would know where the tops of my points are. So it's just kind of a little sample there of how that works. We can offset above and below or in any direction there as we go with that. So what do you think about the wiggle so far? People love the wiggles, Vanna said. I do too. They are so simple and uncomplicated, yet they're really quite fun to work with. What I want to show you here on the 2-inch size, it's a little bit different because you can actually get 2 different stitch patterns with this particular template. We have a round curvy side out here, but you'll notice that there's more space between this point and the top here than what our foot is wide. So we actually have an opportunity for 2 different sides. We can stitch along one edge and the others, and I'll just show you. But it's because in order to get around our corner, our point down here, the template gives us a little bit more room in there, which means we have another stitch opportunity. So let's put it in place. Lower the foot carefully, and I don't have a marked line, we're just going to kind of go with it. So on these particular templates, I also did not put any previous stitch etchings, just because you can go anywhere, any offset, any pattern, any direction you want to with them. I thought that these alignment marks probably would be more helpful than anything else. So if we are doing the outside edges, we'll have one pattern, and that's the outside edge. And then we get up in here, this is the exact width of the foot, but we're going to switch and follow the outside edge and back to the outside edge and the outside edge. That's going to give us a little different shape than when we go with the inside edge. So we're on the outside edge. And when we're at center, it's the same width as what the foot is, so we just want to hug that other outside edge as we come out away from center. And you can see that amount of extra space in there. Now here we are, we go back to the outside edge, coming around here, and we wiggle on down this way. Then we'll spin the template around. Now we're going to run over our star, but that's okay. So we're going to stay on that outside edge. And wiggle on down. And spin around. The wiggles really are a lot of fun to work with. It's kind of one of those, well, I don't know, you don't have to really think a whole lot. Just kind of line it up and go. Just remember if you're doing the outside edge or the inside edge. So here I am down at the end, and what we have done is created our 2-inch wide by 3-inch long pattern 3 times, so it's 9 inches long. And it just gives us a little wider pattern. It's not any longer, it's not stretched out more, so it's not more curvy. No. It's just a little bit wider. So here we are, putting it right back in position where it was, but this time when we stitch back, I'm going to stay on the inside edge, and it's going to give us a little bit different look. And I don't even know where my center is, so we're probably going to end up somewhere. But look what happens here. When we come around on that inside edge, away from that one, we have our curve way over there. Stay on that inside edge. And the inside edge again. And I probably would not do it one right on top of the other like what we're doing here. But this is just kind of to see what we've got going. But it's a pretty good example of showing you what that variation is that you can create just with the one template. You have 2 different stitches. So honestly, with 2 templates, you have 3 different designs. And they all work nicely together. So somebody asked earlier, how would this work with a star template? And I think that's a really good question. And I think we could probably do some more playing and figure something out. But we're not going to do that today. I'm going to let you guys do that and show me. And we're right back where we started. So we have kind of some overlapping in here, and it's a little hard to tell exactly where our stitches are, and then I had some movement going on. But you can see how there is some variation in where the stitch is, whether you are on the outside over here or the inside over here. And if you were to do both, there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of interesting. It just really depends on what it is you want to have. And here I got crooked when I ran across my stitches. So here we have our wiggles. This is the 2-inch wide and 3 inches long. And our smaller one is narrower, and it is 1-inch wide pattern and 3 inches long. So let's see, do we have any questions there? Anything that I need to address? I can run back through these and take a look and try and get some answered for you. But okay, so Vanna tells me there are no questions at this point. You guys are pretty good. I appreciate you coming along, and I hope everyone told me what you think about the stars and the wiggles, and we'll see if we can maybe give away some of these. Oh, just kind of scanning through the comments here, Sharon says that these would be perfect to make water effect or clouds. And I have to agree with you, Sharon. I think that's kind of a fun way to get some pretty quick and easy finishes on your quilts. Not only does it hold it together and give you the texture and things like that, it can be very pretty. Now here, I use some variegated thread, and that really is so it'll show up and you can see it. But if you wanted to have texture and not see your stitching, then you would want your threads to closely match your fabric. And then it just kind of blends in and gives you the texture that's really kind of nice. But if you're wanting to see that stitching, like up here in our circular stars, then you might want to use some thread that's going to be bold and show up. So I thank everyone for coming by today and spending your time with us. And I thank Vanna for letting us interrupt her day and join us so that she could kind of monitor the questions for me. It makes it go a lot quicker when I have her here with me doing that. And so thank you again. And this is Donna McCauley in the DM Quilting Studio saying bye-bye.